my first school was my neighborhood school. I really remember that that elementary school was like put together by the community in that neighborhood. I don't know if they were called noontime aides back then, but like the guy who was there when we were like playing at recess, you know, was my neighbor, like who lived like a few houses down from me on the block. The nurse in our school was my aunt Cynthia was our nurse at the school. And so, I mean, yeah, I feel like all the time, like my mom worked. My grandmom was home at times, but then she also worked a number of years while I was still in elementary school. But like there was a whole community of people who like raised me and took care of me when I was in elementary school. I went to a magnet school for middle school. So I went to Conwell for middle school. And I remember I had to commute. I had to take the Broad Street Line train down to I guess Allegheny, and then take the 60 bus across the city. And my mom, we would just ride together in the morning, and then I'd transfer and get on the bus. Once or twice I definitely like fell asleep on the bus and ended up in like some port or like bus depot station, and thankfully like they like rode me back to school. But I mean, Conwell was a great middle school, right? It was like a place where people from across the city went to school, and I think that was the first time actually that I was in a kind of multiracial environment, right, where there were people from like different backgrounds and who were in school together. Like my neighborhood elementary school was all African American, but this school there were Latinos and Asians and white folks, and that, I mean, I think that was an important experience for me too. And later on for high school, I went to engineering and science. ENS, Carver, and yeah, I think that too was a magnet school, which also drew students from around the city. And I remember a big thing that actually like really grounded me when I was in high school was running track. I started running track in my sophomore year, and it was a little ridiculous, right? Because in the winter time to practice track, we literally ran around the hallway of the school. The school is like shaped like a triangle, so you can go in a full circle around the hallway, but the floors are slippery, so like trying to run full speed in the hallway of the school. I mean, I think throughout the years, like there was just the like feeling that and then there were people who like made the schools work, but I always like had the sense that there was something missing, and actually I moved to Connecticut and finished high school in Greenwich. So I lived in what is effectively like the wealthiest suburb in the country. It's a wealthy suburb of New York, and went to what's one of the best public schools in the country. And things like, you know, having a track to practice on were not issues, you know. Things like the having a wide selection of language classes were not issues. Things like having a science lab. So at engineering and science, like it's an engineering and science school, but like the science lab that we had really wasn't functioning. So like being able to experiment and like try stuff and learn through that wasn't something we could do well at school, you know. And so yeah, I mean, I think actually a big thing that hit me when I went to school in Connecticut, and you know, it was why I went, because I wanted the resources and opportunities, but it like really hit me that there's so much that's missing from the school experience for the kids in Philly, and like not for lack of anyone trying, actually, like anyone who's a part of those school systems like working on things, like because those were like my neighbors, and those were people who were like back in elementary school were people I knew, right? But for a real lack of resource, that like the investment isn't there in the schools, and I think that's always stuck with me, and it's why that, you know, this, my experience in Philly schools was before the economic crisis and before the deep cuts, and also actually before the Edison takeovers and the privatization. And so I know from my sister's experience and how she's needed to go to charter schools to find more resources and opportunities in schools, to the experience of students I've met through the Philadelphia Student Union, that like, you know, so much of what's made Philly schools work, the strong communities, have been broken apart, and the lack of resource and inequality in this school system compared to other school systems has only deepened and worsened. And it's a shame. I think the people who have been a part of the decision makers in this should be ashamed, because I've only been able to figure out and do what I've been able to do in life because of the school communities that supported me and raised me, and so many of our students today are losing that, and it's wrong.
Thank you for your story.